Hello, everybody. It's great to be back on episode 4 of the Purpose Podcast. We have a tiny guest that just joined us. And it's great to be with an author, a very experienced, a very experienced speaker, Luis, thank you very much for being here. Juan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Luis. When you think about a webcast or a podcast like Alex and I discussed about purpose and the need for purpose in the corporate society and in the civil society and in government and all of that, and then you find the work of Luis, it's like really reading the Bible around purpose, and I say the Bible in an important way because it is not his approach is not a merely theoretical approach around purpose, which you find in many places, but it's a very pragmatical approach around purpose, and that's it's when purpose meets the results and when purpose contributes to the results. So Luis is joining us from Europe. We're here in Latin America. We have people in Asia who usually join us, and a lot of people who have a relook when this is recorded and will be posted on LinkedIn for those of you who cannot join us today. So welcome, Luis, and let me jump directly to the core of this. What was your purpose on writing about purpose? What took you there?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Alex and Juan, for having me on the show. It's exciting to have a chance to speak to you guys. And for this purpose, I've been very sort of lucky in life. I came from a very purpose-driven family. My father and my grandparents and my mother, and they were just always about doing what you love and making a difference in life and fulfilling why you're on this earth and really just making a difference to others. So the purpose has always been really in my blood. And when I ended up in the corporate arena, actually, even when I step back, even my high school roles, when I was working at a video store, I had a great purpose-driven manager who inspired me around customer care and taking care of people and giving them a chance to be entertained on the weekends with videos they were renting. So I always traveled in the space, and I got very lucky just to be around leaders that were purpose-driven. So I bought into it at a very early age, and I saw the power of it in both my work and my personal life, really aligning to why you think you're on this earth, and on a business side, why you're there above and beyond making money, and just the power of delivering what you want to deliver through purpose. So that's sort of what drove me to write all my books and my articles. Really the concept, my personal purpose is to enlighten, inspire, and teach. So everything I do is around that concept, and purpose meets execution was that for organizations to live there and fulfill their purpose.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Not everybody has that opportunity to be around a purpose-driven context, right? But now with this pandemic, how has purpose become more relevant? How is that something that we need to talk about more now?
Yeah, good question, Alex. I think it's interesting. Purpose has always been important. I think it's the reason why, obviously, humanity has evolved, because there's a greater purpose and a need to move forward and do meaningful work. But I think the pandemic, more than anything before, has highlighted the importance of connecting your life to something bigger than yourself, right? And being connected to work that you really care about. For example, for the last year, we've all been working from home, and I think we'll be working from home for quite some time in a lot of places. And if you're not connected to something more than a paycheck, it's so difficult to be distracted. I mean, your little one, Alex, came in. I have 2 little ones in my household too, right? But when you really care about your work and you're working independently, you self-manage, right? You work harder, you produce better quality results, you take care of your customers more. But if you're just working for a paycheck and you're home and there's distractions and other things you'd rather be doing, you usually do those. If a recruiter calls you and they want to chat to you about another opportunity, you take the call, right? But if you're really connected to a larger purpose and you see the alignment with your personal purpose and the organizational purpose, it changes it from a job and a paycheck to a purpose, and purpose drives results. And so that's how it sort of works. I think now, I think we need it more than ever from a corporate perspective, from a personal perspective. We need to be anchored to that. I think it's pretty powerful. I think it's highlighted that more than anything, I think.
And in let's call it the 80s, and before the 80s, companies were very focused on the typical mission, vision, values. That's as much as they went into corporate philosophy. And what today we're seeing, which I find fascinating, is that every time more people, it's the employees who choose the companies, rather than the other way around. Of course, it is the company or the corporation that gives the opportunity for employment, but people have a say-so in choosing, maybe not where they go, but definitely if they stay. So how do you think this individual purpose-driven things that is natural to human beings and has been natural, explicitly or not, for a very long time, when companies realize that, and who got it wrong and who got it right, or rather than how can you get it very wrong and how can you get it very right?
Yeah, I think the key behind this, Juan, is to really make sure you're genuine. One thing I'm seeing, which is really interesting, I've been on my soapbox around purpose for the last 10 years or so. I've been talking about it with my brand, and it wasn't talked about a lot 10 years ago, and now everybody's talking about purpose, which is great. But the challenge is, in a lot of organizations now, it's not necessarily genuine. They're using it as a marketing tool, right, to drive the generation and humanity in general, everybody that's interested in purpose, to their organization. But when you get it really wrong is when someone comes to your organization for this purpose, they identify with that purpose, and then they arrive their first day on the job and it's not authentic. It's not what they signed up for. And so that's the danger of this movement now, is if you're going to be behind purpose, you've got to believe in it. It's got to start from the very top of the organization. There's got to be buy-in and belief. And you've got to market yourself around that purpose. And then when people arrive, it's got to be the same thing. And I think that's the challenge now, as you see it everywhere. Come work here to find your purpose. Come do this to find your purpose, right? So it's got to be authentic and genuine. It's got to be driven from the heart. And I always talk about purpose because purpose initially, when we spoke about it in the corporate arena, it was really all about the heart, right? You're trying to do something bigger in the world and help your customers, your community, the world. But they didn't combine the business model, right? The execution behind it. And so it failed. So when I talk about purpose now, and that's where this book grew out of, is bringing the heart and the head together, right? Bringing the drive of why you exist above and beyond making money, and then couple it with a really good business model that helps you fulfill your purpose and ultimately drives your profits and your sales and enables you to buy or bring in, more talent that help you further fulfill your mission and purpose and what you're trying to do in your organization. But if you don't have a good business model connected to that, you can't fulfill your purpose. And I think that was the one thing missing from this whole picture. So it's got to be genuine, authentic, right? Organizations have to believe it and market to it. You got to experience the same thing. And then you've got to align your business model to it so it all works. Because that's another way of caring for your people, is running a good business. Because if you don't run a good business, your people lose their jobs. They can't feed their families, right? They have to go somewhere else to work. So I think part of caring for your people is also running a good business. And that means, for whether you like the term or not, so making money, right, is profit, or cash flow in a not-for-profit. However you look at it, there's a business aspect behind it.
Now,
that's so interesting.
I think you brought up, two main elements, which is the employee and the organization. But you mentioned very tangentially something that I find very interesting. What about the purpose of your market, the purpose of your clients, the purpose of your stakeholders, the purpose of people who buy your services and products? Is it now also necessary for organizations to connect to that one also?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is customers are driving towards purpose-driven organizations. They're driving towards organizations that are doing good for their community. They're sustainable organizations. They're looking at things like alternative energy, all those type of things that are really important and have a bigger meaning and purpose. So customers are certainly driven to that. And certainly it's the same thing as just like talent attraction, right? The candidates you're trying to attract are also potential customers, no matter what market you play in. They're all thinking the same way. So be able to brand yourself as a purpose-driven organization, so you're both your customers and your employees connect to that. Again, it turns it from, like I said, from a job to a purpose, and it turns it from a purchase, a transaction, to a larger meaning. And Tesla was a great example of that. For example, when I spent my time at Tesla, customers were buying, and they still do, are buying those cars, even in the early days when it was disruptive technology and there were issues with the cars and things like that. They were buying it because they were bought into the larger purpose of what the organization was doing. And they were sometimes settling on issues that they wouldn't, another luxury car, for example, little things that were not quite worked out. They were looking past that because they were strongly connected to the purpose of the organization. So when you have customers like that, they help drive your business forward because they care about your business more than just a transaction, the product, and same for your customers. So I think purpose cuts all the way around. I always talk about it as sort of like a chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake. And so if you cut a piece of chocolate cake, it's chocolate cake on the outside and chocolate cake on the inside. And wherever you cut it, it's a piece of chocolate cake. And that's what a great purpose-driven organization is about. You look at it from the outside, it's a purpose-driven organization. You look at it from the inside, it's a purpose-driven organization. If you eat it right as a chocolate cake, it's chocolate, right? It delivers its purpose. So it's got to be 360, and it matters for your customers and your employees.
So it's so interesting. It's got to be 360. We need to include everyone. I mean, everyone in and everyone outside of the organization. But so right now, both people and organizations are in this interesting pursuit of purpose, right? We want to live a purposeful life, and we want to work at an organization that has a profound purpose. But how do they converge? Should they converge? Can they really converge? Both my purpose, the purpose of the organization, and what do we need to do to make them converge?
Yeah, well, I think it's about understanding your talent more, and you're deeper into the candidates that you're trying to interview for. And when I talk about this, I really sort of skew the recruiting process a bit, because a lot of times you post a job, for example, and what a candidate will do is they'll look at that job posting and they will adjust their resume to fit that job posting. Then they'll interview for the job and they'll say all the things that the candidate thinks the employer wants to hear. And so what happens is it's sort of like a bad marriage, right? Everybody sort of puts up their facade. The company puts up what they think they want people to hear, and then and then the candidate says what they think they want to be heard. And then when you get into the relationship, it doesn't quite work. So the key around this is to make sure that you're asking the right questions from your candidates and making sure you understand what they're most passionate, what gets them out of bed in the morning. I always ask that question. One of my favorite questions actually is, if you didn't have to work, if you didn't have to worry about money at all, if you won the lottery today, what would you spend your day doing? It's a question you can ask in an interview, right? It's not an illegal question. It's a question to get to behind the candidate. And when you watch a candidate respond to a question like that, and they really hit on what they're really passionate about, you will see their body language change, their voice level change. You will see physical changes in their body, and they'll be very articulate probably about what they're talking about. They'll lean forward. So you'll get a sense of what their personal purpose is and how it aligns to your organization. So back to your original question, if you're looking for a role, let's say you love animals, right? For example. So if animals are a personal passion for you, whether it be animal rights or whatever it is, you want to look for an organization or a job, hopefully, that aligns with that passion and purpose. If it's kids, if it's cars, if it's sustainable energy, whatever it is, there's something that you really care about, and there's a job for everything, right? There's millions and millions of jobs around this planet. The issue is people are not taking the time to get off the treadmill and think about what they really want, what they really care about, asking questions like this. What gets you out of bed in the morning? What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? And then once you understand that, then you look for employers that do that type of work. And then when you're hired, there's that purpose alignment. But we all know, I'm not naive to know that we all need a job, right? We all need to make money. And in an ideal world, everybody would be aligned this way. I know that's not necessarily reality, but that's the world I would love us to move towards. But we can get much further down the path, like I said, if people just stop and reflect on what's important to them, what they want their legacy is. If you look back on your life, if you move yourself forward visually and think, okay, at the end of my life, and then you look back, what do I want to leave for this planet? And that's a great indication as to what you see as your purpose. And then you look for roles like that. And then organizations that do certain things in their sector, they look for people that are passionate. They recruit in those pools, right? If you're a big car fan, you recruit in areas where there may be people that are interested in cars. So it's really about target marketing for your talent that you're trying to bring into your organization. Same with your customers. But it's just an understanding of both sides, I think, that brings it together from my perspective.
What about, let's call it the survival kit cynicism? When you understand that you need a job, and that's a reality, and you need to pay the bills, and you need to pay the tuition or whatever, and then you work for a place that does not meet your purpose, maybe it doesn't even meet your values, and then that's why it's a bit cynic. To what extent is it valuable or feasible for people to say, you know, I'm working here, this does not fit my purpose, but the money I get will allow me to get to that purpose? Do you think there's this phase on that? Because that's the reality of a lot of people.
Yeah, no, the bottom line is that scenario makes complete sense. And if you're making good money, first of all, I would never, ever advise anybody to just find their purpose and then quit their job and go pursue that, right? If you're in a job you don't like and you're not fulfilling your purpose, whatever it is, and you want to explore it, what I would advise people doing is taking a night job or doing something on the weekends or reaching out to someone in the space you want to work in to chat about them, or volunteering your time on things that would align with your purpose and trying to make the transition if you can. If you're not interested in that and you're making good money, you've got a good job, that's fine too. But the one thing you have to realize in life is if you have alignment with your purpose, you will always deliver better results. It just makes sense, right? If you're making a really good money and that's your driver, right? Someone could always pay you more. So first of all, from an organization standpoint, if that's the only tie for that employee to the organization, if someone comes along and offers them $10,000 more a month or a year, whatever it is, they're going to leave because that's the only connection they have to the organization. So money is a very weak link for organizations in general. But if you're tied to that and you say, okay, this is a good job, I'm making good money, I'm going to stay here, you have to realize that you're just never going to get out of bed at the same level and excitement as you will when you're going to work making good money. Let's say you could make good money and also align with your purpose. How much more successful will you be, right? Because you don't have to do your purpose and things you really love and fulfill you part-time, right? You could merge those together. So what I'm saying, the secret in life for me is to find out what you love, what you do best, and then figure out how to get paid for it. And if you are doing that, I always like the 80-20 rule, right? If you could spend 80% of your time doing what you love, what you're best at, what you believe your purpose is, and getting paid for it, you're probably going to make way more in your life, in your career. You're probably going to have much more success. You're going to get better jobs. You're going to produce better results. It just makes sense that's going to happen. So it works when you have an employee that has a job, right? Getting paid and is staying there for the money. They may deliver those expectations, but the people that really deliver well and above and beyond their expectations are usually the people that are aligned with purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it reminds me, and obviously I'm sure you read it. It's the whole ikigai Japanese thought around what I'm good for, what the market needs, what I love, and where I feed the world.
Yeah, well, I'll give you one more example that is the most powerful example for me. When you walk into a retail store, I don't know, probably everybody in this call has been on a retail store, and you walk in and you're looking for something, and there's an employee, for example, on their phone, they're ignoring you in the old days when you could actually approach people, right? And they're ignoring you, and you can't find your product, and you're getting lousy service. What do? Right? You leave the store because you can't find your product, or you fumble around, and then when someone asks you where to get a product, you're probably not going to refer that customer, or you may not go back to that store. You'll find another store. So that hourly employee, let's say getting $8 an hour, that treats you that way is impacting your business results, right? Your top and bottom line results directly, and they're impacting all the other people that customer tells. That's also impacting your business results. But if you walk into a store and you meet someone that's highly knowledgeable about the product. They acknowledge you, they want to help you, they give you great customer service. What do? Right? You tell everyone, wow, I had an amazing experience there. They really knew what they were doing. They helped me find that record I was looking for, whatever the case may be, or that tool I was looking for. And you go back and you tell other people to go back. So this simple little connection of someone that's really feels like they're, for example, if you're working in a hardware store and you love tools and you love building things, right? And you walk in, I've had that experience, you walk in for help and you have a really knowledgeable person that's really passionate about it. And it just inspires you as a customer. And it makes you want to come back and makes you want to spend your money there, and it makes you want to spend more money there. I'm a big motorcycle guy, so I've been riding motorcycles my whole life, and I bought my first Harley about 6 years ago now. And when I went in there and bought my Harley, everybody in there were huge Harley fans and motorcycle people. And I bought probably about $3,000 more of stuff than I would have bought if I was just going in to buy a motorcycle from someone selling a motorcycle, right? So it works. It's really powerful.
It ultimately it's about behaviors, right? How a someone behaves shapes the culture and shapes how the customer reacts, and how I mean how every transaction is directed. So my question here is, can it be multilateral? I mean, can we train certain behaviors that connect to the organizational purpose, even though it's not the purpose of the individual? And is there a connection where we can shape behaviors so that everybody gets what they need, even though maybe they're not 100% married with the purpose of the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, there is this organization, I'm drawing a blank of the name right now, but they support small businesses. And what they essentially do is they have employees throughout their business, obviously doing various jobs. But most of the people that work for them are interested in working for them because they like to support small business, or they're interested in small businesses themselves. So if someone is doing a job that's totally unrelated, the organization has set up a program where they support people to run their own businesses while they're working for the organization. So it could be totally unrelated, their job, to what they're doing, but there's a program to allow them to run their own business on the side. And they support it. It could be financially, it could be through mentorship. So you stay at the organization because you're also fulfilling your purpose by doing it. Some organizations that run purpose-driven platforms, for example, will have, if someone, let's say, always wanted to write a book, and they're in an accounting function all day long playing with numbers. It doesn't fulfill what they want to do, but they're good at it. They're making good money. But one of the purposes they've always wanted to do, let's say they wanted to teach people how to knit or whatever it is, and they want to write a book about it. They have programs in purpose-driven organizations to help support initiatives like that. So it gives you a chance to fulfill your purpose working for the organization, even though you may be doing things differently. And then you suddenly tie that organization to your personal purpose. So even though your job's totally related, maybe the organization's totally related, you are able to fulfill your purpose by working in an organization. So there is suddenly a link. So these are ways you could sort of overcome that. Because to my earlier comment, it would be, it'd be in an ideal world where everybody was linked this way, but it won't. It's not reality, right? But you can still give every single employee in your organization an opportunity to give them a chance to learn about who they are and help them achieve what they're trying to achieve.
Let's talk a bit about the business case behind this. Definitely the first book I read about this was, I think, published in the mid-90s, which was Firms of Endearment. And in Firms of Endearment, it is actually a business case where they say they study 100 Fortune 100 companies, and they compare those that have a purpose more on the have a mission, have a value proposition for employees and for customers vis-a-vis those who don't. And they're able to show clearly that the results, on the top line and on the bottom line are significantly different, and they could differ up to 15-16% when there is purpose and when there's not. Now that was some time ago, and I think the world has moved a lot around purpose. How do you see from your study now, because obviously having purpose is nice, having purpose to get to execution is nice, but how have you seen it actually happening regarding top line and EBIT when you measure that as a business case?
Yeah, so this really stems to about 40 years of research done around engagement, and there's a correlation, and that's the book you're mentioning, Firms of Endearment. It's a great book, and I cite it as well. But if you connect the purpose movement and you have a bridge over to engagement, which we know purpose drives from these studies, right? We know it drives engagement. And there's 40 years of research that plus 40 years plus of research that shows engaged employees that are higher engaged produce better results. They take care of the customers better. They do safer quality, safer environments, cultures. They care for their customers more. They deliver more top and bottom line results. So the bridge between, when you look at it from a business case, is we know purpose drives engagement, and we know engagement drives business results, right? And so the more connected someone is to that a purpose alignment we're speaking about, we know there'll be a direct correlation to the level of their engagement in the business and their job and what they're doing, which will have a direct correlation to business results. And like we said before, I'll give you another example from actually O.C. Tanner, which is a reward and recognition company I cite in the book. And when I toured their manufacturing site, there was a woman there that was polishing pins, and she'd been polishing pins for 20 plus years. And she was really into polishing the pins. And when I asked her what she does at this organization, she said, I help reward great work. And I told her to explain further. And what she said is, when I polish these pins, I envision them being given to an employee to reward great work and how that employee feels. And then when they take it home to their family and share it with their family and friends, and how they feel and how those people feel as a result of that. So she said, I want to polish this pin as best as I possibly can. I want to get as many of these pins out the door as I can to reward more great work. Now, there's a great example of someone driven by purpose that moves into their engagement level and ultimately into their production and what they're trying to do. So that's how it works. And good, I'm launching actually just in the next week or so a new platform called Engaged on Purpose, which is around this concept, right? It's a people solutions platform, and it goes on this premise that if you are identifying alignment with purpose, that it will drive employee engagement and then ultimately your business results. So that's how it works. And it's just really, really powerful. And it deals with big data and analytics and understanding people and understanding how the numbers work with it. But the correlation is very, very basic. Like I gave you in that example of the pin polishing, it just simply makes sense, right? If you care more for your work, you're going to be more engaged, right? If you see a personal connection to that purpose, you're gonna put more time. And that's why people spend time. A charity that I've been involved with that I started in the U.S. about 10 years ago, World Child Cancer, we have volunteers that have been dedicated to that organization for decades. The UK sort of branch that started the initial charity, and they're making, either if people aren't employees there and volunteers, they're making no money to be involved in the organization, but they care deeply about the purpose. Whether it be a child oncologist that's donating their time, it's something that they see as part of their purpose. And they work really hard and dedicate time and get on board meetings and spend time trying to raise money and all this stuff that they're doing and making absolutely no money for it. And that's what you want. So if you could take that commercial sort of mindset, if you take the sort of the not-for-profit mindset, why people donate their time, and that's back to that question is, what would you do if you didn't have to worry about money, right? So if you could couple that with a commercial business, imagine the power of that, right? When someone is polishing this pin, they go, oh yeah, by the way, I get paid for this too. How cool is that? But I'm helping reward great work. This is why I'm here, right? So I think that's the power of this, and that's how it works into a business model. If that makes sense.
It does. It makes sense. So sometimes work around purpose can sound theoretical or philosophical, right? I mean, even the voice of purpose, it sounds something philosophical, but you present a very down-to-earth approach. You talk about results through purpose, but ultimately, what does purpose has to have to be able to meet those execution expectations?
So you're saying, Alex, if I got this right, so what are the mechanics of the
exact the mechanics of purpose? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
What's the recipe? What are the four things you need to put into the blender to
yeah.
make
So
it work?
like I said, I think the mechanics for me is to operationalize it. And operationalize it means that you support it throughout your organization. Again, in your branding, internally and externally, in your reward and recognition programs, in your leadership development, in your management development, in your compensation structures, in everything you do. And so when I talk about operationalize, it's in there. So for example, when I spent 11 years working at Stryker, amazing organization, and they grew their business 20% year on year. And I always use this as a great example because when we were talking about growing the business, there was obviously a mantra of 20% growth because that was something that had happened for so many years. But it wasn't about focusing on that 20%. It was about how do we help improve and save more lives with products. And if you don't know Stryker, it's a sort of plates and screws and hip and knee implants and things like that go into the body to help people live better lives and save and improve lives. So the way that those financials were delivered, when we're talking in meetings and executive meetings, it was like, how do we improve and save more lives? And the more we can improve and save lives, the more profits and more sales are going to come in as a result of that. But it was reinforced in everything that we do, right? Whether it be one-on-one coaching with an employee, whether it be, like I said, how do you reward and recognize that person? It was for those behaviors that fed into the purpose. And there were reminders all over the business. And this is another key component to your point of putting in the blender, is reinforcing it with stories and visuals on the wall and, let's say, video screens or posters, or in your meetings when you're talking about that, reinforcing it everywhere you possibly can. And when I go back to my earlier comment about being genuine, is if you're a purpose-driven organization, you're reinforcing things on the wall, you should have easy stories to tell as evidence to support what you're talking about, right? Stories where people have gone above and beyond to deliver their purpose, and it should be happening all over your organization. So reinforcing it and reinforcing that operational sort of platform that you're putting forward in your organization is absolutely key to making sure this works. It can't sit on top. It has to be part of the DNA of the organization. So everything you're designing and everything you're thinking about and everything you're delivering, purpose has got to be part of that decision. And when I talk about it in my model, I talk about your why, your where, and your what. And those are the sort of structure behind my model. And the why is, again, why you exist above and beyond making money. Your where is where you're going, your vision, right? If you don't know where you're going, if you're about to take a road trip, you'll never get there. If you don't know where you're going, you can't paint a beautiful picture for those around you, whether it be investors or your employees or your customers. They can't help you get there. And then finally, your what. What do you do every day in every role that you do in your organization that ultimately feeds in to fulfilling your purpose and driving towards your vision of the future? So those are some of the key components. And again, that cuts across everything you do. So those three components, your why, your where, and your what, need to be discussed in everything you're designing and how you're building your organization. And that's when it becomes part of your DNA, it becomes operationalized, and it works. And it's not a fluffy sort of, pink unicorn type of thing purpose. It's ingrained in what you do, and it's natural.
Let me add to your formula question on the want, because it's just why, where, etc. But then there's a thing on the will, and let me bring the very interesting article you shared yesterday from McKinsey, and there's something that I think shows a clear reality, and that is that the clarity on purpose and the engagement on purpose tends to be much higher on the top of the pyramid than on the bottom of the pyramid. We seem not to be able in organizations to have a proper trickle down effect. That's one. Or the echo from the bottom is, it's not as relevant as it is clearly from the top. What do you think is the catalyst we're missing there? Because I know many organizations where leaders are convinced, shareholders are convinced, they choose a leadership. In order for that leadership to be convinced, they have tons of workshops and they create a common vision, a common purpose, and then you put it on walls, and then it seems not to trickle down, and there's no echo from downstairs.
Yeah, so I hate to do this, I'll do a shameless plug, but the program that I mentioned, Engaged on Purpose, which I'm launching, is designed to address this issue, because you're exactly right. What happens is you may have a CEO that buys into it and no one else does, and then they push forward and it doesn't work, or you have maybe a board that push forward doesn't work. The goal in a great purpose-driven organization, again, back to my chocolate cake analogy, is right. It's got to be top down and bottom up. And the way you get that is by collecting feedback and listening to your people, right? Whether it be through pulse surveys, engagement surveys, other methods, one-on-one coachings, regular meetings with your manager where you discuss what's going on in the organization, how people are feeling, things that are going well, things that aren't going well. But it's got to be vetted both ways. So the way it works is, like I said, if you can't get it fixed, if you don't have it fixed at the top, it's always going to be broken at the bottom. So you have to, I always start with the top and make sure there's alignment. And then when you have alignment at the top, then you got to your point, you got to trickle it down through the organization, hear what people are thinking, how they perceive what you're saying, if they're getting the message, if it makes sense, if it resonates, and then that feedback has to go back up. And then adjustments need to be made to align. So it's a two-way street. And then it goes back down and it comes back up. But if you're constantly measuring that and you have a feedback, a listening loop and a sharing loop, and hopefully in real time, you always know what's going on in the organization, and you could pivot and adjust as need be. But it doesn't work. You can't force, to your point, you can't force a purpose down from the top and make it work, because people don't feel part of it. And the whole point of purpose and meaningful work is you feel part of the organization, right? You feel connected to it. And that's why you want it to be successful and you want it to thrive. But if someone's telling you this is what it is and you do it whether you like it or not, and it's important and this and that, and you don't really care, you just don't care about it, right? And you leave the organization. Retention issues happen, or poor work quality happens. So you're right. It has to be top down and bottom up. And that's what the system I mentioned is really all about helping to do.
I love that. Those cycles that we need to be patient, right? We cannot do it in a year or two. It needs to be, a decade of work, and maybe some of that work we won't be able to see, but we need to have that perspective, right, in order to be able to impact the whole organization, right? And that's one thing. And the other is, what can go wrong? What is your advice when things go wrong, when we try to pursue a profound purpose and we're convinced and leadership is convinced and the board is convinced, but where can it go wrong?
Yeah, and the biggest place that it goes wrong that I've seen personally throughout my career is burnout. And I've seen I had friends that actually left their own businesses, that started a business for their personal purpose and what they wanted to do in their organization, and built it up and spent endless hours each day, 7 days a week, driving it to the point where suddenly they got burnt out. I've experienced it myself. I mean, I love this space and I put a lot of energy and time, but I also love my family and there's other things I love to do. And I'll share with you in a second a tool I sort of use in my purpose development to help me realign myself. But that is a big issue, because if you're in a situation where you love what you do, and let's say you're getting good money for it and you got good management, everything's aligned, you will tend to put a lot of energy and time into it, and sometimes to the detriment of other things that are important to you. I've seen in my career people that have missed their children's graduations or birthday parties and things like that, and the regret later in life when they look back, and they love what they did, but 50 years down the road, they start to regret it. And then they say, wow, I missed these really important things in life. So it's really important in a purpose-driven organization, when you have this alignment, it's working, is that you actively manage the balance and make sure you make it okay for people to do other things and explore other things, encourage people to do things that they're interested in doing in their lives, and just remind people that, life is short and you could be missing things that are really important if you're not spending time thinking about it. So the tool I was going to mention, I use something which I designed in my first book, how to find a job, career, and life you love. And it was something I grew out of me. It's called SLAM. It's an acronym for what you need to stop doing, what you need to do less of, what you need to add to, and what you need to do more in your life. So I do this on a regular basis. For example, if I find myself spending way too much time working, and my 8-year-old, I have a 12-year-old and 8-year-old. My 8-year-old, I haven't played with her enough, over the week. I will stop what I'm doing and I will balance that, and I'll go down and spend some time with her, because I know later in the day when I go to bed, I'll regret not spending time with her, because I know she's not going to be 8 forever, right? So I'm always thinking about that. And I think that model is something that corporations can use, employees can use, anybody can use, to just stop for a moment and think, do I have the balance right in my life? So hopefully you're blessed to land yourself in a situation, like I said, where you're playing to your purpose, you're making good money, you're doing all the things you want to do, but you just have to be careful that it doesn't consume your life to the point where you're missing out on other important things. So that mindset of just being mindful about balance in life is key.
Sorry, let me jump into. I don't want to make anybody upset, but let me jump into something which is we haven't covered and we haven't even discussed. When we say this in agree in such a compelling way around people, and we understand it around organizations, and we understand it around communities, what's the missing piece around government?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, I think this is my personal opinion. I mean, there's purpose-driven leadership, and from my perspective, purpose. You can have a purpose to do bad things, right, in life. You can have a purpose to do good things in life. When I talk about purpose, I'm obviously talking from a very positive perspective, right? I'm talking about making things better. I mean, my goal in life is to leave this planet better than I came into it. That's my hope. There's also sometimes perspectives that people believe they're doing good things with their maybe not. And this is where the feedback loop is so important to make sure. I think in a government situation, it's a really loaded question, and you may get me in big trouble here. But I think you need to listen.
I said it generically. I'm not referring to any government, but so because how democracy works, and let's suppose a democratic government, just for that, people choose one purpose, and sometimes they win and sometimes they lose. So. Yeah. By definition, there's a group of people who lost the election and therefore do not have the same purpose of the people who won. And I think that's where difficulty comes.
Well, here's the thing. From my perspective, government is there for the people, right? That's why especially if we're talking about, let's say, the US, it's there for the people. And so it's got to make sure it's satisfying the masses. And it's make sure that life is getting better for the masses. And that's got to be the guiding light behind that. So right now we have lots of issues, right? We have racial tensions, we have political party tensions, we have violence, we have this nasty virus that's changing the way we live. We have a lot of dynamics going on. The government needs to be focused on looking at all those issues despite partisan challenges or partisan differences. We've got to come together collectively and think what is good for the people. It's the same in an organization, right? How do we care for our people and care for the masses? We're obviously not always going to be to please everybody. That has to be a realistic situation, right? We're not in a government or an organization, whatever. You're not always going to please everybody. But I go back to the 80-20 rule. And I just don't think right now we have it right from a government perspective when I don't think 80% of the people are in a good place for a lot of reasons. And I think when I think about government and the humanity in a whole, I think just globally we have to take care of our people, whether it be healthcare, whether it be making sure people have a roof over their heads, whatever the case may be. We need to make sure that we're improving lives, and that measure has to be. So when I think about government, I think they measure the engagement survey for them, right? Is your country or your community or whatever you overlook and whatever you serve, is it getting better as a result of what you're putting forward? And we have a lot of nasty things going on, whatever side you're on right now. The partisanship is where the issue is, right? We're all humans. We all need to come together for the good of humanity, whether it be wherever you are living on the planet. We need to help people live a better life, right? And take care of their health care and take care of their food on their table and their kids. And I think if you focus on that as a government, whatever level you are, I mean, I think that's your measure. And I think we've lost our way. It's just too split, right? We're not in two different planets. We are one race of people, and we've got to live together in some form of harmony and improve each other's lives. And it seems to be going the wrong way in a lot of cases these days.
Now that we are talking about these subjects, I would like to put the matter of capitalism, right? The purpose of capitalism, for example, and how it can be misleading to think that the purpose of economy is infinite growth, right? And we start developing and creating, not considering the welfare of humanity and the planet, right? So maybe if we start also thinking that my individual purpose needs to be aligned with a collective purpose, a purpose that is transcendent, not only for me, my family, my community, but also those who will come in many generations ahead, right? How can we align that purpose, or where can we start that conversation? We will not finish that conversation right now, but what are the pieces that we need to consider in order to talk about these subjects?
Yeah, I'm an idealist, and at the end of the day, and so I really do buy into the concept. And first of all, I think capitalism is a great system, and money is important. It fuels everything, right? And the fact of the matter, as I mentioned before, if you're not making money, you can't employ people who can, again, feed their families, and you can't hire more people. So, for example, let's just talk about a single organization. So if you start an organization and you start making lots of money doing it because you're delivering something that your customers, your community, or the world needs, and you start making lots of money, you can hire more people, right? So more people can get jobs as a result of that. They can live better lives. They can get better education to their children. They could feed them better. You get better healthcare coverage. And as that organization grows, the more money it makes, the more you can serve your community. So I'm not saying that an organization needs to be all about bleeding heart and just shuffling money towards people just necessarily to care for them. But it does work, right? If you think about that concept of building an organization to help care for people, it works because you're providing a product to hopefully help improve the lives of your customers. You're providing jobs to improve the lives of your employees. And you ultimately, if you get that right in that mix, the more you make more money automatically, and then you can do more for your community. So I think the model of capitalism works. There's many other political systems that would work in its pure sense. The problem is nothing really works in its pure sense. But at the end of the day, the measure has to be, we have to be making money and using that money in some way to continue to grow the business, which is capitalism at its core, but also to take care of the people we serve and around us. And if we're all thinking that way, the planet will be a better place to live, and humanity will continue to work. And corporations have a huge hand in that because corporations drive the economy, right? And for example, when I was spending a lot of time in talking about benefits connected to life-saving drugs, which are disruptive, that are very, very expensive. And there's a whole debate over this, right? Organizations that spend, R&D organizations spend a lot of money, billions of dollars inventing these life-saving drugs, and then people can't afford them or can't get them because they're so expensive, right? There's a balance that needs to be made, right? Those organizations need to be rewarded for their R&D. They need to be encouraged to do that research and development, to develop those life-saving drugs, but then they have to be accessible to our people so we save lives. So that's where the economic model needs to change. And I know when you first have disruptive technology or anything, eventually the prices come down, but we need to figure out how to do that quicker so that we can develop great things for humanity, make them accessible, and eliminate the greed around some of this stuff. I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would add something. Things work better when there's a sense of ownership, and that system gives a sense of ownership. When you don't own something, an idea, a project, or something material, it's very difficult to get the attachment to move on towards that. Let me shift gears for a moment, and totally out of politics, but into something else. After, I'm sure you've talked to tons of leaders. I've talked to some tens of leaders, and there's like two sorts of people: the people who because of their upbringing, or because of their family values, or because of the society they were brought up in, there's always a sense of purpose and things that need to be done. That's a group of people. But then there's another group, which I find fascinating, that has this epiphany, some moment in time, that makes them realize, purpose is relevant. And I find more the latter than the first piece. The first piece are the people who work forever in these things. What do you think is that epiphany, or what generates that in big leaders, that suddenly, and sadly towards the end of, when they start talking about legacy, that's when they do it. So there's people who come with a chip in, and there's people who have a built-in chip. What is that brings that chip to life?
Well, I think it's, getting off again the treadmill and really thinking about your life, or through any stage in your career, and really giving this topic some time. I think the reason why, there's been tons of reports that show, a Gallup organization did a lot of research, says 80%, of the globe of people that are working in jobs aren't happy in what they do, right? I can't remember if that was Gallup that did that exact study, but the research is consistent around that. You always see numbers around 80% of the workforce is unhappy. Now, I think there's a couple issues why that is. There's people that are, like we spoke about earlier, that are making money, they need money, and they're afraid to upset the apple cart, right? They're afraid to move into something else, that it may not fail, and there's not confidence around that. There's not a strong bet of, I'm going to be successful doing it. So I think confidence is one issue. Comfort is another issue, right? People get comfortable. It's really easy to get comfortable in life, and then to your point, when you're 80 years old, you look back and you've taken all the comfortable decisions, and you didn't pursue things that you really wanted to pursue. A lot of times, purpose, unfortunately, comes up when people have some tragic situation in their life, right? They almost die of cancer, or in a car accident, or something else, and then they realize, oh, there's more to life. But I hopefully can leave your audience with the fact that you don't have to wait, or you don't have to have something tragic happen in your life to spend time thinking about what's important for you, right? And so there are people that have those epiphanies, and they're usually in some kind of tragic situations. What I've been doing on my soapbox, and what I did with my first book, my hope, is to put some strategy around this, so you're not just meandering around life and hope you find your purpose, but you're actively trying to pursue it. And that's, again, about exploring things. You may not find it immediately. It may take you 5-10 years to find out what you're really good at. For example, for me, my epiphany was I had worked really hard to get to a vice president of human resources in the Fortune 300 company at the time. And it was something my dad was always he was a very successful executive, and I wanted to sort of make him proud. And I hit the VP title, and he had passed away a couple of years earlier. And I got the VP title, and suddenly there was no wind in my sails. And I was thinking, and I was doing work I really love, but the title, I was chasing that because I thought that was what I needed to fulfill myself. But I was doing it more for my father than anything else. And that was a sort of epiphany for me. So when I started thinking about my purpose, I started looking back over my career and said, when am I most happy and fulfilled? When am I most successful? And it was in times when I was inspiring, enlightening, and teaching. And I was able to do that in my VP role. I was enjoying it because of that. But it wasn't the title, it was the work I was doing. So what I would encourage everybody to do is to move that needle forward, is to stop where you are right now and think back over your career and think, what have you been doing over your lifetime that you've enjoyed most, that you've been best at? You've got the amazing comments where people say, wow, that's amazing, I could never do that, right? That's like your superhero thing. And again, what your potential legacy may be. But look back and sort of connect the dots, and whatever that was that you were doing at that time consistently over your life that really fulfilled you and drove you and made you successful, that's most likely a shining light on your purpose. And then you can start pursuing that. And like I said, if you're in a job where you can't leave at that time, you could volunteer, you can try things on the side and hopefully make a transition. But the key is not to wait until suddenly that epiphany or something bad happens in your life. We got one short life to live. There's a great quote, life is not a rehearsal. You need to activate it and enjoy it and do what you need to do. And if you make that alignment, you also, not only are you personally fulfilled, but to our earlier discussion, you're making a bigger difference on the world, right? You're making the world a better place through, hopefully, your purpose, and that matters as well. It makes what you do more meaningful as well.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. We're at the top of the hour. We're closing this interview, but there's this strange question, which is there any question, Luis, that we haven't asked that is important on this subject?
Well, you've covered a lot. You've been very, very thorough. I guess I would say around leadership, and I'll leave this with you on leadership. I think one of the most important parts, and it feeds back to some of my earlier comments, but is really genuine, authentic leadership. I think if you're leading an organization, we all know that there's leaders that'll get up and they'll say all the right things, and people are intuitive. They know when the leader really doesn't believe it. And I think in life, if you want to deliver and run a very purpose-driven organization, you've got to walk the talk, right? If you're a leader in an organization, whatever you do, whatever you're trying to do, you've got to get up in front of your people and say what's in your heart and what you truly believe. And I think that's the secret to great leadership, because when you speak from your heart, people connect to you and they believe you, and there's a subtext behind it. It's been many years in theater before my corporate career, and in great plays, or if you watch a movie or TV, what moves you to tears or laughter is not what the actors are saying or maybe how they're moving. It's the subtext behind. It's the connection, the heart and mind connection to what's happening. So I think as a leader, we can learn that same lesson, and if we're genuine and we lead with the heart, then and people see that, they're gonna follow us more, and they're gonna buy into what we're doing and be more inspired by what you're trying to do. But I think that's a really key element behind leading a purpose-driven organization: authenticity and being genuine.
I just 2 comments. That brings me immediately to connect to the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett on emotions, which I think I don't know if you've seen it, but it's one of the most, how emotions are made, and then how do you connect those emotions with what you want to do. And I really appreciate this has been fabulous. It went really fast, and I just want to highlight 2 things. Number one is the big gratefulness that we have with you for sharing this to the mostly Latin American public that we have. It's interesting how people, even with the language, do not have access to the material and to the discussion. So that's what we're trying to do. And then raise something up, which I find very, when you talk about genuine, and it's, you've smiled through the whole hour. So that shows your passion and how that this is exciting, and that how this is a happy path at the end. I'm very grateful for your words, but most of it for your inspiration and the fact, and I don't take it loosely, the fact that you smile when you talk. It's like bringing happiness to the world through something as simple as knowing where you're going.
Oh, you are awesome. Thank you for that. I'm taking you guys with me wherever I go now. Thank you for that.
It's our pleasure. What would you put on a billboard so that everyone can see? What's a phrase you would put up there?
Well, my daughters would tell you immediately. My favorite quote is, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change," by Dr. Wayne Dyer. That's a quote I live my life by, and it always helps me get the right perspective on things that I'm doing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Luis. It's been a pleasure listening to you and learning from you. I hope it's not the last time.
Awesome. Thank you guys again. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you very much. And it's luisefron.com. You can find a lot of material there. Luis doesn't stop bringing material. He publishes something and then adds into it's not enough. He adds into what he's published. Thank you very much. And as we always say, the best is yet to come, and we're trying to make that best happen. Thank you very, very much, and great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.